You are so lazy. All you do is to eat my money. Why can't you make yourself useful?
Babe, not today.
The day Michael called Sarah lazy, something inside her broke quietly. Not because she had nothing to do, but because she knew the truth. For 7 long years, she had woken before the sun and slept after the moon. She cleaned, cooked, washed, ironed, and made sure the house was perfect. Every corner of their home carried her effort. Yet Michael looked at her like she was nothing. Each word he spoke, each accusation, pierced her heart like a cold wind. That day, Sarah realized her silence had been mistaken for weakness. Before we dive into Sarah's story, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss her journey of courage and empowerment. It's going to change the way you see love and strength. When Sarah married Michael, he had sounded so sure of himself. He told her a good wife stays at home and takes care of the house. He said working outside was not necessary for her and promised to provide everything she would ever need. Sarah believed him because she loved him deeply. She left behind her plans, her dreams, and even her career ambitions. What Michael did not know was that Sarah was no ordinary woman. She had graduated with a first-class offer from university. She had stayed up late for exams, sacrificed sleep for assignments, and dreamed of making a difference in the world. But she had put it all aside for the man she loved. Every day, Sarah woke with a tired but determined heart. She cooked before Michael left for work, made sure the children's uniforms were clean, and tidied the house until it sparkled. She smiled when he returned, asking politely about his day, and listened carefully while he talked. No one ever praised her. No one ever noticed her sacrifices. Still, she told herself quietly that her work mattered because it was done with love. She reminded herself that love sometimes meant giving up pieces of yourself, and she believed that her obedience would be appreciated one day. But slowly, Michael's words outside the house began to sting more than any chores ever could. Whenever they were around friends or family, he praised other women. "Look at my sister Anna," he said with a smile. "She is smart, hardworking, and independent. She knows how to manage herself." He would talk about his coworkers, the women in his office, and say how brilliant and strong they were. Sarah stood silently, nodding politely while her heart sank deeper and deeper. She had given everything for him, yet he celebrated women she could never compete with, not because she wasn't capable, but because he had told her she should stay home. That night, Sarah lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if love was supposed to hurt this much. Her mind wandered to the life she had put aside, the dreams she had sacrificed, and the strength she had hidden behind smiles. A quiet storm began to build inside her. Somewhere deep within, she felt the first spark of something dangerous, a whisper that said, "Maybe it is time someone notices what I've done. Maybe it's time I see my own worth." Every morning, Sarah woke with a heavy heart, even though the house was spotless and everything was in order. She remembered the day she graduated with first-class honors, the proud smiles of her family, and the endless nights she spent studying. All of that had been set aside for Michael. She had given up her dreams, her ambitions, and even the career she had worked so hard for. And now, whenever Michael spoke of other women, she felt invisible, like all her sacrifices had never mattered. That week, Sarah went to the market to buy groceries. On the way, she overheard women talking about their jobs, their achievements, and their successes. For a moment, Sarah felt a pang of longing, a sharp reminder of the life she had put aside. She wanted to scream, to tell them she had once been brilliant too, that she had the same mind and ambition, but she only walked quietly, pretending she didn't care. At home, Michael was already waiting, his phone in hand, ready to tell her again how women who worked were better, smarter, stronger. That evening, Michael began praising a woman he worked with. "Jessica is amazing," he said casually, scrolling on his phone. "She has 4 children and still manages her job perfectly. She is strong, smart, and hardworking. Women like her are rare. Sarah's hands clenched at her sides, and her chest tightened. For children, working, doing everything she had once dreamed of doing herself. And here he was, admiring her while she was forced to stay home. The silence in the room was deafening, but Sarah's heart was screaming. Later that night, while Michael slept, Sarah sat by the window, holding a cup of tea, tears slipping down her cheeks. She whispered to herself, "Why does he not see me? Why does he only see other women?" Her mind wandered to Rebecca, her best friend, who always encouraged her to speak up. A quiet but strong thought began to grow inside her: maybe I don't have to stay silent anymore. Maybe it's time someone knows what I have been through. Maybe it's time I see my own worth. For the first time in years, Sarah felt a spark of courage, small, fragile, but unstoppable. Sarah had never been to Michael's office before. That morning, she decided to visit him, curious about the word he praised so often, the word of smart, hardworking women he admired. Maybe if she saw it herself, she could understand why he constantly compared her to them. Maybe seeing them would quiet the storm building inside her. When she arrived, the office was bustling with activity. Workers were typing, walking, and talking, the sound of phones and printers filling the air. Michael greeted her with a quick smile and a small hug, but then he immediately turned to his coworkers. "Everyone, this is my wife, Sarah," he said, introducing her casually, his hand brushing hers like a formality. Sarah smiled politely, trying to appear calm, but her heart was already racing. Michael didn't wait long to begin praising his team. "Jessica," he said loudly, pointing to a woman at her desk, "she has 4 children and still manages her work perfectly. She is brilliant, hardworking, and disciplined. I respect her so much. Women like her inspire me every day." Sarah felt her chest tighten. 4 children, working, managing everything perfectly, just like she had once dreamed of doing. He went on, naming other women: "Maria handles all her clients alone, Anna finishes every project early. These women are strong, independent, and capable." Sarah stood silently, holding back tears. Her hands trembled slightly, but she did not move. Every word from Michael felt like a hammer striking her heart. For years, she had obeyed, sacrificed, and worked tirelessly at home, and yet he celebrated these women she could never compete with, not because she wasn't capable, but because he had told her to stay home. On her way home, the car ride felt heavier than usual. Her hands gripped the steering wheel as if it could hold her together. That day, Sarah realized she could no longer ignore the storm inside her. Something was changing, something that would eventually break free. The night after the office visit, Sarah could not sleep. Every word Michael had said that day echoed in her mind. The way he praised Jessica, the woman with 4 children, the way he admired Maria and Anna, and yet never saw her effort, it burned inside her like fire. For the first time in years, Sarah felt a quiet, dangerous thought growing in her heart: maybe I don't have to stay silent anymore. Maybe someone needs to hear my story. If you're feeling Sarah's pain right now, imagine what comes next. Don't forget to subscribe and stay with us to see how she takes control of her life. The next morning, while Michael left for work, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chairs where her children had just sat. She picked up her phone and called Rebecca, her best friend since university. Her hands trembled slightly, and her voice shook when she asked, "Can we meet? I need to talk." Rebecca sensed the urgency immediately. "Of course, Sarah. I'll meet you anywhere," she said kindly, her tone filled with concern and understanding. At the small cafe where they met, Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she poured out her heart. "Rebecca, I feel invisible," she whispered. "I have stayed home for 7 years. I obeyed Michael. I gave up my career, my dreams, my ambitions, everything. And yet, he constantly praises other women, calls them smart, hardworking, better than me. He says I am lazy. I feel worthless. Her hands shook as she gripped her cup, trying to keep herself from collapsing in front of Rebecca. Rebecca reached across the table and held Sarah's hands. Sarah, she said gently but firmly, you are not worthless. You gave your life to something you believed in. That does not make you lazy. That makes you brave. What he says is not the truth about you. And you know what? People need to know what is happening. Your story, your truth, it matters. You have the right to speak, to take back your life, and to show your children what strength looks like. Sarah looked at Rebecca, feeling a spark of courage ignite inside her. For the first time in years, she felt hope, not just for herself, but for the life she wanted to claim back. Michael came home that evening, and from the moment he stepped through the door, Sarah knew trouble had arrived. His voice was sharp, harsh, cutting through the quiet of the house. Sarah, where have you been all day? Doing nothing, I suppose, he shouted, pacing the living room. His eyes, cold and judgmental, scanned the spotless house as if nothing she had done mattered. All you do is sit at home, eat my money, and contribute nothing. You are lazy. Sarah felt her chest tighten. Every word Michael spoke was like a hammer on her heart. She had spent 7 years taking care of this home, raising their children, and sacrificing her dreams for him. She wanted to speak, to tell him about her sacrifices, to remind him that she had given up a first-class degree, ambitions, and a career for this family, but the words caught in her throat. Michael's insults continued, comparing her silently to women he admired, his sister, co-workers, even friends he said were better than her. That night, Sarah cried quietly while the children slept. She hugged them close, whispering apologies she didn't need to make. Her tears fell silently, mixing grief, exhaustion, and rage. She thought of her life before Michael's constant comparisons, the ambitions she had once chased, the dreams she had abandoned. Her heart ached, but a tiny spark of resolve began to form. I cannot let my children grow up thinking this is normal. I cannot stay here feeling invisible. I need to protect us. The next morning, after Michael left for work, Sarah made her decision. She packed bags for herself and the children, carefully including clothes, food, and essentials. One by one, she guided her children out of the house they had always called home. Their small hands clutched hers tightly, sensing the tension but trusting her instinct. When they arrived at her mother's house, her mother ran to embrace them, holding Sarah and the children close. Tears mixed with relief as Sarah finally felt something she hadn't felt in years: freedom, strength, and hope. For the first time, she had chosen herself, and she knew that this choice would change everything. When Michael returned home that evening, he immediately noticed something was wrong. The house was too quiet. The smell of dinner still lingered, but there were no children running around, no sound of Sarah moving about. Panic rose in his chest. Sarah. Children, he called, his voice cracking slightly for the first time in years. He rushed from room to room, his heart pounding, but the house was empty. A cold fear gripped him. He grabbed his phone and called her repeatedly. Sarah. Pick up. Answer me. His voice, once filled with authority and control, was now desperate and trembling. Each unanswered call made him more aware of the weight of his words. All the times he had insulted her, called her lazy, and praised other women came rushing back. He had ignored the quiet suffering he had inflicted for 7 years. Now, the silence was deafening. Hours passed, and still, she didn't answer. Michael sank onto the sofa, exhausted and lost, his mind replaying every cruel comment he had made. He saw her tears, even though he had never watched her cry before. He thought of the sacrifices she had made for him, the house she had cared for, the children she had raised. Every careless word now felt like a knife pressing into his chest. He realized the truth too late: Sarah had strength, dignity, and courage far beyond what he had ever understood. Finally, unable to wait any longer, Michael jumped into his car and drove straight to her mother's house. His hands shook on the wheel as he rehearsed the apologies he had never thought he would need to speak. When he arrived, he saw Sarah standing firm at the gate, the children holding tightly to her hands, calm and composed despite everything. Michael realized, for the first time, that he had underestimated her strength. He knew that if he wanted to save his family, he would have to earn her trust and show her the respect he had taken for granted for far too long. Michael's hands shook as he stepped out of the car at Sarah's mother's house. His heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of fear, regret, and hope. He had rehearsed apologies all day, but seeing Sarah standing there with the children holding tightly to her hands made him realize no words could undo the years of hurt. She was calm, composed, and strong, a vision of the woman he had ignored for far too long. "Sarah," he began, his voice breaking, unsure where to start. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have made you feel small. I was wrong." But Sarah shook her head, holding her youngest child a little tighter. Her eyes, once full of pain, now glimmered with quiet strength. "Michael," she said softly, "it took me 7 years to see that your words do not define me. I obeyed, I sacrificed, and I gave everything for this family. And yet, all you do is praise other women while calling me lazy. I am not invisible anymore." Michael felt a sharp ache in his chest. He realized for the first time that his arrogance, his careless words, and his blindness had almost cost him everything he loved. But as he looked into Sarah's eyes, he also saw the fire he could never extinguish, the courage, intelligence, and strength she had kept hidden for so long. She was not the same woman he had married. She had grown, and now she demanded to be seen, to be respected, to be acknowledged for everything she had sacrificed and everything she could achieve. Sarah took a deep breath and smiled faintly, a smile full of relief, pride, and power. "I am not leaving because I hate you," she said. "I am staying because I am choosing myself. If you want this family to survive, you will have to see me, really see me, and treat me with the respect I have earned." Michael nodded slowly, tears welling in his eyes. He had finally understood, he could no longer take her love for granted. And Sarah, for the first time in years, felt the full weight of her own power, the courage to speak her truth, protect her children, and claim the life she deserved. She had finally found herself, and nothing would ever silence her again. Sarah found her voice, and so can you. If this story inspired you, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us for more real, emotional stories that make you think, feel, and never stay silent.